This is Sherm Radio in partnership with Timber Media, Podcasters for India Inc.
Hello everyone and welcome to Sherm Radio once again, where we talk to leaders about all things work, worker and workplace. And I'm your host Archana Jareth. So if I look back about 2 or 3 years ago, well-being and wellness was seldom points of discussion. Well, the last 18 odd months have totally changed that. Employee well-being, whether it is mental or physical, emotional, psychological, are top of mind concerns for leaders and organizations today. And perhaps with good reason. A recent research that was conducted by the International SOS Foundation, which features employer, health professionals and experts from around the world, highlights the pressing need for a focus on well-being and the need for a chief well-being officer. Founded in 1985, the International SOS Group is trusted by 12,000 organizations, including the majority of Fortune Global 500, as well as mid-size organizations, governments, educational institutions, and NGOs. But before we go any further, let me start by asking you a question today. Do you have a Chief Wellness Officer yet? What's that you say? Well, that's exactly what my guest today is going to throw light on. And I have with me Dr. Vikram Vora, Medical Director, International SOS India, who is also a pandemic health consulting expert with over 22 years of experience. A hearty welcome to you on Sherm Radio, Vikram.
Thank you, Archana. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much. And let me with that start by asking you a very important question. Can you give us a quick line about what a Chief Wellness Officer does and why is it critical for organizations today to invest in such a role?
So, Archana, if we just go back to what you had said earlier, employee health and wellness has always been something that has been a stated intent. It hasn't been coming to the fore. But in the last 18 to 20 months, we've seen that the scale and the implication of this global COVID-19 pandemic, it caused most organizational leadership teams, it caught them off guard. It made them to rethink their strategies. Corporate leaders around the world had to rapidly go back and recalibrate their priorities. They had to now focus on health and well-being of employees and the societies in which those employees lived and operated. And this is not something that's going to go away pretty soon. It's guaranteed that whether it be the next big pandemic or even the regional small endemic situations that come up, whether it's the impact of these on, employee well-being in terms of mental well-being and mental health, or whether it's the already alarming rise in non-communicable diseases we see across the world. Leaders will constantly be called upon to address and deal with newer health challenges. In fact, the survey that you spoke about, over 70% of respondents in this recent survey by the International SOS Foundation, they said that health and safety roles are likely to increase in scope and complexity, over the next 10 years. And absolutely any crisis management team now or in the coming times is likely to be incomplete without credible guidance in addressing these emerging health challenges, because these are the ones that can severely impact business resilience and sustainability in the long term. So, we've seen organizations depend upon, experts in the legal and financial domains. Similarly, a dependable expertise in health and wellness will be required for organizations of the future to create an appropriate culture of well-being and to instill that common purpose in an organization. Now, whether an organization chooses to have its own chief well-being officer or starts an office of well-being within their organization, or whether they do it themselves or they have an external partnership to fulfill their needs, this has now become a very, very critical role. And that's why it's essential for organizations to invest in this.
I totally agree with you, Vikram. In the last 18 odd months with the pandemic, the whole impact on business, on resilience, on continuity with this focus of, wellness and especially, mental well-being becoming a talking point in a country like ours where it's always been a taboo subject, has really brought this to the fore. So tell me something, what do you think the ideal role of a Chief Wellness Officer would look like in an organization, going forward?
So I have to start with the absolute basic. In my experience of having worked with several crisis management teams through these, 20 months, the ability to serve as a credible and trusted source of information is important, because today we have either completely inaccurate information and a plethora of it roaming around, or we don't have adequate information. And that causes panic within employees and business associates. So traditionally, health and safety is something that has been owned and delivered by different departments, whether it's the HSE department, in some companies it's the HR department, some companies have an occupational health services department, etc. But a wellness officer really goes beyond the realm of everything that has already been done. While working in close coordination with these teams, it's actually a very long-term strategic role that can assess and analyze these evolving health challenges and the opportunities, and then help transpose these into the organizational growth agenda. Basically serving as a bridge between health issues and business priorities. This role will actually take leadership responsibility for the organization's health and wellness policy, whether that includes critical event response, crisis management, occupational and environmental health initiatives, community health, health benefit design for employees, and overall employee security. So this is what a chief well-being officer would ideally be called upon to do.
So, Vikram, you consult with so many organizations and you have so much rich experience in this area. Any examples, especially, do you see this happening already in Indian organizations? Any examples that come to mind?
There are a few organizations that have been extremely active, in ensuring that they don't have a chief well-being officer yet, but they have a team that functions as that, and it is comprised of, and it's primarily been a response to the pandemic. It wasn't something that's been thought of before they did it, but there has been a fulfillment. The fact that they reached out to experts in the field, the fact that they got people involved including employees. They got some employees involved in developing strategies to deal with this pandemic. Well, it's begun, but it's not all there yet.
Yeah, I'd love to carry on this conversation because it's such a huge impact, on productivity, efficiency, overall morale of and engagement of employees as well, when it comes to well-being and total well-being at that. But, Vikram, we'll take a very short break right now and come back and carry on this conversation. Stay tuned, everyone. I'm in conversation with Dr. Vikram Bora, Medical Director, International SOS. And we're asking you the question today on whether you already have a Chief Wellness Officer yet.
You are listening to Sharm Radio in partnership with Timber Media, podcasters for India Inc.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm in conversation with Dr. Vikram Bora, Medical Director, International SOS, and we're carrying on the question on why every organization should be seriously looking at the role of Chief Wellness Officer. So, Vikram, we were talking a little bit about some of the practices that you are seeing coming to the fore and emerging in organizations. In your experience, do you see that organizations, or do you believe that organizations are investing enough in holistic or total well-being practices for their employees?
Arjuna, over the last 35 years, we at International SOS have been supporting health and wellness needs of our clients all around the world. And these clients include the very, very large global multinational conglomerates, as well as these small and medium enterprises operating in specific geographies and smaller locations. So where we've seen that larger companies have a structured and holistic approach to health and wellness, and they allocate a sizable budget to it as well, not all the others have so far exhibited the same commitment. But however, a lot changed during the pandemic. Almost like a worldwide organizational awakening occurred, bringing health and wellness suddenly to the forefront. Many companies, during this pandemic got affected by the business downturn, by, disruptions in supply chains, having, sick employees and even deaths due to COVID-19. And almost all organizations had to suddenly now invest in ensuring the safety and well-being of their employees and their families. But this can't be a limited focus. Unless we continue this focus, there's no saying what the next health event in the future, would do. It would bring us back to square one, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So whether organizations are doing it the right manner, I think the sustained involvement of both the leadership as well as the other teams is important. We need an investment of not only funding, but we also need an investment of leadership time. That's going to be essential to manage business sustainability over a period of time. And critical to this entire effort would be the fact that we need to track not only the return on investment, of course that needs to be tracked, but also the value that it brings to the employees. So it's really a value on investment that needs to be tracked and measured. And we are working with a lot of companies in India and in other countries where we are helping to deliver these strategies and then measuring the outcomes of them as well.
So you just talked about, working with companies in India and in other countries. How do you compare, how Indian organizations in India are really looking at well-being as a priority compared to other countries?
Well, if I could look at what the priority for most organizations is in terms of health and well-being, it has been limited. It's been limited to delivering things like, annual employee health checks, maybe the occasional health talk on a World Health Day, etc. So there are a lot of mistakes that organizations do end up making, and the most important one of them, if I was to outline, would be the limited involvement of the leadership. Health is no longer a subject that does not require C-suite involvement. It does. What has been earlier seen as a perk, is now increasingly being viewed as an essential driver for business continuity. So priorities need to be, we need more focus on the priorities. There are common mistakes being made, like not understanding evolution of the health and wellness needs. It's constantly changing. It's not a fixed target. A few pages on a corporate intranet can't be a substitute for a comprehensive wellness program that's thoroughly reviewed periodically. And taking a copy-paste approach certainly is not what's recommended. It's very apparent now that wellness needs are going to be different based on which industry you're in, what geography you operate in, what does the community look like in which your employees live and work, and what kind of work patterns do they have. A lot of companies have now committed to a hybrid work pattern. For somebody at home, the needs are different from somebody who's working in an office environment, including families. And that's something that a lot of companies have also started looking at, including families, because if there's somebody working from home, you can't say, I'm going to take care of my employee and not his family who is right there with him. And, more importantly, I think what needs to be done is make sure that we have the right partner to execute on the health and wellness goals. Having 10 different partners and coordinating with 10 different agencies do it sometimes doesn't give you the same outcome, as having an expert do it for you. We don't want to frustrate the best of organizational intent and effort, do we? So it's certainly important that we take a very, very close look at what we have been doing in the past and what we should be doing in the future.
So very quickly, if you were to say what are the top 3 gaps or, things that organizations overlook when they're looking at a holistic well-being. I know you did talk about a lot of that in your earlier answer, but top 3 things that you think organizations need to either stop doing, start doing, or change the way that they are managing their, well-being practices.
Well, for one, I think the most important thing is that there has to be senior level involvement. And that involvement is not only in design of programs, etc., or the strategy, but also in the execution. It has to be top driven. Mm-hmm. Secondly, stop playing catch up. I mean, every industry is different. Like I said, what the other person may be doing may not be applicable for your organization. So that's something that also needs to be seen. And thirdly, the coordinated effort that is required to deliver these to your employees wherever they may be, that has to be taken care of. So I think like I said earlier, it would be great to work with somebody who knows what they're doing in this field.
That's a wonderful, sort of summarization, Vikram. So you did talk about, the fact that ROI is definitely impacted when, and we need to look at it at least partly, if not fully, in terms of ROI. And, there is enough conversation happening today about productivity, efficiency, and you talked about, leadership paying attention to this. So how do you see health and well-being, or lack of focus on this impacting employee productivity and efficiency? Any examples, any recent situations that you have seen that you could share with our listeners?
Sure. First, let's be clear on what health and well-being actually mean. It's not just an absence of disease anymore. It actually encompasses how people they feel, how they function, whether they're functioning at home, within their families, or at work, or within their communities, and how positively they view their own lives. That's in a sense what health and well-being should actually encompass as a definition. We know that the negative effects of being ill, either physically or having mental, health challenges, it can affect a person's cognitive abilities. It can affect his or her behavior. It can affect emotional outcomes and even social functioning. It will and it does impact the capacity of people to participate in work. And that leads to a reduction in productivity, performance, etc. And on top of that, when you come to a workplace that has inadequate means to deal with these issues, this leads to a employee being in the office but not really being engaged with something we call as presentism, absenteeism as well, and then a low motivation. And that not only affects the team in which the employee works, but also the department, the organization, and then certainly the wider economy. In fact, very, very pertinently, the WHO recently revised its international classification of disease, to include burnout as a condition. And burnout is an occupational phenomenon, as it's defined now, which results from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed.
That's
but
very
when you do, yeah, and Archana, when you do actually manage this, there are when people are in a state of mental and physical well-being at work, they're able to be productive, build positive relationships with their peers, have good relationships outside of work, develop that resilience and cope better with stress. I have worked with a lot of organizations, HR and HSC teams of a lot of organizations designing these wellness programs and wellness strategies. And we have actually seen positive and measurable improvement in not only productivity and efficiency, but also in general well-being, amongst employees, the way they interact with each other. And that actually is what we need to aim for.
I think, Vikram, from what you're sharing and, also what one reads about and, hears from others, I think this is an area that has to become and has to stay a, primary focus with sustained efforts, leadership focus. And like you said, it's no longer a perk. It is now essential to have a very well-defined, well-rounded well-being policy and having experts, within the organization or external experts that organizations can rely on and have that sustained effort over a long-term period. It's been a very fascinating conversation, Vikram. I would love to continue it. However, we are, running out of time. But any last thoughts, anything you'd like to add to the conversation for our listeners' benefit?
Well, certainly what I'd like to say is that, the challenges that we have faced in the last 18 months are not over yet. And the challenges continue. There will be newer ones. But I think if organizations, stand together, if everybody is aligned to what we need to do, I think we are going to be able to conquer anything that the world throws at us. So stay safe and be resilient.
Those are wonderful, on that wonderful note, Vikram, I would really like to thank you for your time. Like I said, I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation and learned so many new things, about this particular space. So really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Archana. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise, Vikram, and I'm sure our listeners have also, benefited hugely from this conversation. So thank you so much, Vikram, and thank you to all our listeners for tuning in to Sherm Radio, which is brought to you by Timber Media Podcasters. Like Vikram said, stay safe, stay protected, and until next time.
This is Sherm Radio in partnership with Timber Media, Podcasters for India, Inc.